education will be involved in two-year institutions. If the leading graduate programs or if graduate programs, period, are unable to educate their graduate students into an understanding of the role of the humanities of higher education that is completely devoid of 60% of the people of the students that are enrolled in higher education, then something is wrong. Now, there is some movement, there are some changes, and I think this goes a little bit towards what John was saying. Notre Dame and Georgetown were looking at the wonderful resources you have here. Georgetown ain't no Notre Dame in terms of just the facilities and so on, but we're still all in a very comfortable, in spite of all the budget talk, we are still in a very comfortable place compared to many other places. And but this goes back to our responsibility and how it affects us.
I might also add, and this was something that was brought up when we hosted Randolph Pope in this discussion about the MLA white paper on the future of the language major. Although locally I don't think we risk closure of the language programs, we do risk marginalization, and the humanities as a whole is at risk to some extent. Now again, I think we recognize that in many ways we're ahead of the curve, but it doesn't take long to get behind this particular curve in some ways. And it again then behooves us to take some leadership and some proactivity, as one of the panelists mentioned, in addressing that.
Just a quick follow-up too on this point. I happen to be a graduate of the Texas Public Education System, so I know exactly what Peter's talking about there. Despite that, I make it this far. Anyway, my take on the MLA is that they did respond in conjunction with the white paper a bit to the assessment issue, but it was entirely, their response was not oriented to the MLA. It was not oriented to all the people who need to hear leadership from the MLA. It was oriented towards Washington, and it was saying to Washington, these things that you're talking about are, fine for K through 12, No Child Left Behind, accountability movement, but that's not what we're about. We're the humanities. We have inherent value. Leave us alone. That was the response. And I've heard presidents after Peter say exactly that on many occasions. It's quite troubling. And so, unfortunately, that doesn't say anything to all the people in the MLA who have to deal with exactly these issues that we're all talking about and facing. And so, and it undermines the potential value of assessment as something else besides that responding to the accountability type of assessment. And so, I thought that was a particularly unfortunate tack to take. I understand why they did it, but since then, nothing. So,
well, not only that, nothing on the white paper. Really, there's nothing that the MLA has done in terms of follow-up. The members sort of went around the country giving presentations on this, but there's really no, as a professional organization, some sort of NEH summer institutes or things like that would address some of the issues that were raised in this report. It's really unfortunate, sort of the non-follow-up issue.
To bring it down to a very concrete, very local level, it's midterm. Should we be doing anything special right now? I mean, outcome sounds like the end of the semester. Are we supposed to be thinking already about doing maybe a midterm review or something? Maybe it's got an email from the institute that Kevin represents, Clark saying, you might want to do a survey of your students right now, midterm, for example. Do you recommend that kind of work? Or should we wait till the end of the semester? I'm not quite sure. How are we going to get moving on this? Are we going to wait for you to tell us something? Are we supposed to be doing something ourselves? Or
I think I have two answers to that. Not that they're the right answers, but I have two. One is that I'm actually a big proponent of certain kinds of midterm formative feedback to instructors that creates a dialogue between students and faculty. And I think that can be a really useful process. And also happens to turn into better course evaluations at the end of the semester, usually if you act on those things. But that's an aside. I mean, I think that's a great type of assessment activity to engage in. But I wouldn't encourage hastily moving into any kind of immediate assessment activities until there's been some chance for really the programs as a whole to talk about these things and strategize. strategize a bit and say, you know, what is our priority at this point in terms of assessment? Let's turn our attentions to that and take some gradual steps forward. And so our intention right now is, as we meet with the different departmental groups, to begin that strategizing process and start identifying, you know, real concrete priorities for, okay, what's next, what really needs to happen soon. But I do think, I'll go back to something I said earlier, which was that trying to do too much all at once often can be also undermine the value of the process. So I think it's, you know, very gradual is the way that leads to positive change and positive reception of these things on the parts of the participants. So
Stand up.
I wouldn't tell you to go out and do it.
Well, actually, I'm not part of some of the stuff. What would prevent you to talk to some of the other people who have gotten the same email and about your purpose of having that midterm and so on? I would definitely would not suddenly, oh my God, now I have to change the midterm or something like that. But it does not prevent you from, you know, raising this issue. What exactly are we doing here? What are we trying to do between sections? What are we trying to do at the various levels? Why this midterm? Sometimes we just do all these assessment things because they've been done for generations and generations. And sometimes we have found, first we thought, oh, this is all extra work. We found, well, we're doing all sorts of things that we really, if we do it more cleverly, we can drop 50% in one year. Because we get much better information and we can act on it much better. So it ends up, you know, this bit of work to begin with, but we end up having to do less work on that sort. Conversation is certainly.
I think that's a terribly important point and one worth repeating, in that what it is we are trying to do is not simply additive, saying you must do X, Y, and Z above and beyond what you're already doing, but rather calibrated, in that we're trying to recalibrate what you're already doing, make it better, not just more efficient, but more substantive. And that is the ultimate goal. But as much as this panel is perhaps a call to action in the short term, I guess, and this certainly came through in all three panelists' brief talks, but let me just reiterate what this project is all about. In essence, we are asking for people within programs, within departments, to talk to one another about what it is they're trying to do. And it's really as simple as that. It's as simple as saying, our intent for our particular program is X. Do I have that right? Are we measuring and benchmarking that correctly with the assessment practices that we have on hand? How can we improve that? And as has been said before, an iterative process where you revisit these issues over and over again, and it becomes a part of the programmatic and departmental culture. So in that sense, that can be begun immediately simply by talking to colleagues and reflecting oneself on what it is that I do to ensure that I'm accomplishing what I intend or what I claim to accomplish. And that largely internal process, I think that needs to be an internal process for every faculty member, is something that we hope to instigate even now, although it's worth also pointing out that whatever action we take needs to be systematic, needs to be, as John said, gradual and carefully thought out, because to do otherwise risks sort of sabotaging what could be a very substantive initiative. So we want to make sure that we've plotted 2 years for this project, so we have a lot of time, I think, to get it right, and we're going to establish the appropriate departmental or programmatic, and in many cases these are already established. Romance has led the way in many cases. But take advantage of those departmental structures to then implement these things in a systematic way.
Just to clarify too, so no one's feeling left out, I think Julia must have subscribed to the Learning Technology blog, and so Chris was following up on, we had a workshop 2 weeks ago where we recommended faculty do an early evaluation where they get feedback from students about how things are going in the course. And Chris created a set of questions for our course management system that are the same questions from our end of semester evaluation, that if people wanted to do something just very quickly, they could use those same questions, or they could add their own. So it's kind of, it's related to, but separate, I think, from the assessment project that we're talking about.